little bar that comes up that sort of counts down from 10, and it always makes me like feel under pressure for some reason. Good afternoon and welcome to this latest in our series of webinars. Today we're going to be talking about manufacturing. I'm joined today by Sam Ingram from Havant and South Downs College. Before I hand over to Sam, I'm just going to go through a really quick little bit of housekeeping. Please remember both Sam and I are working from home, so there may be a few internet issues, dogs barking in the background, children. Please do forgive us. We will resume normal service as soon as physically possible. What I will point out is we do have a Q&A section. Please do put any questions you want in that Q&A section. No question too small or no question that is silly. If there is, I've probably asked them already. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sam. I'll be back towards the end to help with the Q&A. My name's Jodie. I'm from the Solent Apprenticeship Hub, and we provide impartial advice and guidance around all things apprenticeships to employers, individuals, parents and carers. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sam, and he'll take you through this presentation. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Jodie, and thanks for inviting us to be part of today's presentation. So my role at Havant and South Downs College is the Business Development Manager, so I will go out and see all the businesses in the local area and try and encourage them to support the apprenticeship initiative. In terms of my background, I've been working with apprenticeships for around about 15 years now, mainly in the FE sector across different counties, sort of from East Sussex down. And I'm going to just give you a fairly generic overview of our offer on manufacturing, but very much in terms of the wider offer and the wider employment market for the sector as well. So just moving on to our first slide. So the manufacturing sector is a big priority sector for the local area. Looking at the local enterprise partnerships statistics around manufacturing, it's anticipated to be one of the key industries for the Solent region, particularly for the next 30 years. It's been the sort of figure banded around. There's a lot of surveys and research gone into where the work's going to be, and it's definitely one of the key core sectors for that area. And by proxy, obviously, what comes with that is lots of employment opportunities for your students, for your colleagues to go into the industry. We've got an incredibly vast array of different types of manufacturing that go on in the area, and some huge discrepancies in the sizes of the businesses as well. Very small employers. I've got apprentices in with, maybe one or two men in organisations that maybe do something like motors, right through to people who are, maybe manufacturing fire alarms with well over 500 staff. So it's huge discrepancies in the scale, but very, very wide array of different applications. At Havant and South Downs College, we specialise in manufacturing. That's probably our core, but there are a huge variety of pathways that one can undertake within engineering. The conventional qualification offers about 13 different pathways. Those include some of the core sectors for the local area that we don't offer. Things like maritime, that's obviously a huge sector for the area. Aerospace, which may not be the best place right at this moment in time. You've got mechanical and electrical applications, electronic engineering, and we work with, and certainly out there is a huge array of different applications for the manufacture of different components. So one of the companies I've been to visit not too long ago do components for the racing cars for Red Bull, right through to subsea inspection, remote operated vehicles like ROVs, robotics. You've just got everything. Automation's a big sector at the moment. So what we are is sport by choice, and there's certainly a wide array of potential apprenticeships out there to meet people's interests. We have a lot of specialisms I've alluded to, and what I've taken just from Glassdoor is some average earnings for different roles within the sector. If it's not too informal, I go and see a lot of businesses, and one thing you do notice is that there's never any shoddy cars in any of the engineering businesses' workshops, or car parks rather. So there are some, there are some fairly well paid roles within the sector, and you can dip in and out at different stages in terms of your qualification level to enable you. But even at a starting wage, even as an apprentice, most organisations will pay national living wage really as a minimum. Really, it's quite rare I come across people paying sort of the apprenticeship minimum wages or attempting to pay that for an engineering role. And one of the virtues I think of the sector is that there is a need for the refreshing of skills and a need to import new skills from younger people. So a lot of the business that we work with actually have quite an interesting split in terms of the age demographic of the people they employ, many of which have more young people than older people because of the new skills that they bring to that business. So it's a really great sector to try and get into if you're young and looking to make that transition into an apprenticeship and a career. In terms of the varying levels that you're able to do, there's a really clear pathway within the local region with lots of providers that are able to offer a number of different stages within that. You would start off doing something like the level 2 foundation competence, which people might know as performing engineering operations or PEO, but that effectively just gives you a broad breadth and an exposure to the industry. You then move on to your level 3, which takes 3 to 4 years, so it's quite a long commitment. But at that point, many people will just dip out and they'll go into industry and start working. For those that aspire to move further forwards and perhaps manage other people, then you can progress on to your HNC, formerly also to an HND. That still exists in that structure. And then Portsmouth University offer a manufacturing degree at level 6. So you can very much stay in this area, working and educating yourself throughout and enabling yourself to progress through your career. So there's a really good transitional route right the way through the levels. And ultimately, the idea or the key benefit of doing it through the apprenticeship route is that you could get yourself up to a master's degree level, fully funded, without having to make any outlay from you or your parents' coffers. In terms of the delivery, it's still one of the kind of more traditional apprenticeship mechanisms for a course. So we still offer a day release scheme, and that's because of the fairly intense level of taught information that comes with the course. So learners will come in one day a week, and that also helps say what's called a 20% off a job requirement, which you may or may not be aware of, but the government have imposed this rule now that everyone that studies must have 20% of their time through an apprenticeship spent on training and development. So it's a very simple exchange. So the employers release them for a day, they spend a day in the classroom learning and developing and being taught, and that states that requirement. We also will send a assessor or trainer to the workplace to do things like job reports and look at the actual practice within the workplace. And we'll look to find a workplace mentor in the organisation, someone that's going to support and develop the learners. And of course, as with any course, there's some degree of independent study. So what next? How to go about doing it? So we would recommend, as a team and as an institution, really, that you start looking at what the options are in terms of the available landscape. And in a second, I'm going to share a really good place to do that, which is the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. Obviously, talking to people like Jodie and her team, who can make impartial referrals to different organisations that best meet the desired area you want to work in. Jodie very much has a broad spectrum of what's available in the wider landscape, so she can say, well, the person you want to talk to about maritime is this, or aviation is this, and signpost you to the right people. Look at the colleges and see what they're all doing, but equally, talk to us as a team, come to open days and engage with the apprenticeship teams at the colleges and ITPs, so it's independent training providers, and talk to them about what they offer. And of course, the national site is still a good starting point. I think the one thing I'd advocate as someone that's been in the sector for a long time is that if you signpost students to apply through the websites of the colleges and through the national site, the National Apprenticeship site, they go in the melting pot with 15 to 20 at a minimum other students looking for those same opportunities. It's difficult, but it's good if you can encourage students to take their own initiative, go and gain work experience straight away from school if they can with an organisation, get that reference, and that gives them that little bit of leverage just something to make them stand out from the crowd. But equally, that often then leads on to them being offered an apprenticeship course. It's also important to consider someone like BAE, for instance, or any of the other Lockheed Martins and businesses like that. They have their own internal apprenticeship schemes, their own funding. They're extremely selective. There's probably some psychometric testing that goes into that, and a fairly protracted application process, which is set at the same point every year. So it's worth getting in touch with them nice and early, round about now, if not perhaps sooner than now, and just finding out what their processes are and how you can apply to them. So I'm just going to try and screen share quickly the Institute for Apprenticeships with you. I'm going to see if that works. Here we go. So hopefully everyone can see that. Okay. And within that, what you need to do is go to the Apprenticeship Standards tab. And that then brings up the full plethora of apprenticeship standards that are available to you. Of which I think we're currently at 740. So we're not short of choice. If you want to filter down to engineering, just pop that on there, and then you get some fairly tailored responses in terms of what the engineering offer is in the local area, and you can start looking at these different courses that can be done and how much they cost. And so that at least gives you a bit of a window into what's available, what sort of courses are available. Now, the next thing that you want to consider doing is find apprenticeship training as well, providers in the local area, and that will also help you in terms of finding the providers that offer the courses that you found that you're interested in. Right, I'm going to try and switch this off now. Okay, hopefully I'm back in. So that's it really, everyone. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sam. We have got some questions that's already come in, actually. Okay. The first one is, how has COVID-19 affected manufacturing industry and the possibility of apprenticeships? Okay, so it's a very mixed picture in my opinion, out there at the moment. So you've got some businesses that maybe are doing things for, let's say, aviation. So they're obviously going to be hard hit. You've got others that maybe have been doing things for the hospitality industry. There's a business I know of that manufacture lids for coffee cups. They've obviously had a bit of a stall. So there's very different pictures in different pockets. Then again, there's businesses in engineering, manufacture who have been doing things for the medical industry who are absolutely rushed off their feet and have never been busier. So the opportunities are there. They're just a little bit harder to find, and you might have to be a little bit more thorough in your research in terms of which businesses you're targeting in order to find the right opportunities. Yeah, it's always worth saying as well, isn't it, that all of the vacancies are advertised on Find an Apprenticeship. So you just need to Google that, and it's the .gov website. And there are still opportunities on there. I think people assume at the moment that there's not going to be anything on there. There is less than normal, but there is certainly not nothing. So, and certainly Sam and I were talking before this, we're seeing over the past few weeks little green shoots, people starting to inquire. So I'd expect in the next couple of months for that volume to grow. So I think any work you can do now on your CV, on your application forms, researching really what apprenticeship you want and how you want to do it is all good work, all stuff that will be useful in the future. Right, Sam, I am going to go on to our next question. What are some of the best known employers apprentices work with in this standard? So what are the best known manufacturing employers? Well, I've obviously got a bit of a bias working for the college with our own set of employers that we work closely with, and we've got some excellent clients that we enjoy working with. But the sort of wider, bigger industries, the defence industry is obviously massive in the area. So I mentioned a couple earlier, BAE, Lockheed Martin are massive businesses, and you've got Apollo Fire. They're one of the biggest businesses in Havant, so that'd be an interesting one to consider. But then there's a real mixed bag about how people approach apprenticeships within each of the
different businesses. So some have their own schemes, as I alluded to. Others maybe look at more internal development of their own staff with their apprenticeship levy, which we didn't really touch on today. So I can answer any questions people have got about that if they have any. And then there's some that have perhaps their own schemes completely set up that will be about bringing young people into the business as well. So we work with a great business over in Shoreham, Ricardo, who have they do a lot of the emissions testing for government, and they will take maybe 4 or 5 young people on every year, and they'll train and develop them and send them to us, all the way from Shoreham. So the span and scope of where you're potentially going to target is quite broad and can be quite broad. And I've noticed, and some of you may or may not know about the college that we merged with Alton College a little while back, but actually there's a slightly different employment picture in Alton, which isn't that far away, but it's just little pockets in the different areas. So it's worth considering different geographical areas if you're not having a lot of luck, if they're commutable within a reasonable distance as well.
Absolutely. Next question. What's included in the 20% off the job part of the apprenticeship?
So from an employer's perspective, they can say to doing a number of things. It's not as linear as here's a day off a week every week. So I myself did an apprenticeship recently, or fairly recently. And within that, I was given some time to do a project within my working hours that was outside of my normal duties. That stated that requirement. I was given some time to do some study and to attend a class. All of those things, are possible ways of meeting it, but also things like shadowing another individual, stepping up into someone else's role. These are all potentially viable ways of meeting 20% off the job guidance, including coming to college as well. So that all of those things are part of it. But the key message is that people must have ring-fence time to train and develop, and that's essentially what that is about.
That's lovely, thank you. How long does it usually take to attain a level 3 apprenticeship?
I mean, that's it's a malleable question in that some level 3 apprenticeships you can do in a year if you're really focused and work hard. Others are 4 years. So there's no one size fits all model. It depends on the sector. But if you're talking specifically engineering, the recommended duration is 42 months on the Institute for Apprenticeships. And to be honest with you, that's pretty accurate. It's quite an involved qualification. Just doing the 10 units of a PEO at the beginning, if you start at that point, takes about a year and a half. So it's a big qualification with lots of work in it. So definitely, 3.5 years is probably not too far from accurate.
Okay, lovely. Is it quite a competitive environment to get a apprenticeship in manufacturing?
Can be, yeah. I mean, it's differentiation at the beginning, I think, is the key thing, really. If you can stand out with that reference that I alluded to or something like that it'll give you that foot in the door. And I guess, as a sector, they're always looking for the best people. So again, competitive grades, particularly in mathematics, is really important. I think that's probably the key message I get from employers. And it's also the biggest barrier when people are maybe a bit more borderline and an employer takes them on. It's not so much about their work. The work is fine, but sometimes the maths that they have to apply in the second year of a level 3 course is quite difficult and certainly more complex than I could cope with. I can tell you that now.
Lovely, thank you. If you've completed a level 3 engineering course at college, can you then look for a level 3 apprenticeship?
It poses more problems now than it used to. So formally, the way that the qualifications were structured, if you'd have studied at college, you'd have done something called a technical certificate, which was the taught information, and you could have done the MVQ in the workplace, which was the vocational competence part of the qualification. Now we've moved to apprenticeship standards. The two aren't mutually exclusive anymore. It's much more of a holistic skills, knowledge and behaviours. So what we'd have to do as a training provider, if someone came to us with a level of knowledge, is deduct that knowledge from the funding that we receive for the qualification. It might mean it makes it difficult to do. If I'm frank, I'd probably recommend that someone that had done a level 3 at that level maybe looks at doing something like advanced manufacturing at level 4, the H&C level, and just progresses straight in at that level. provided they had the sufficient grades to do that.
And what would be the requirements of that? You know, just thinking about a job role that would sit alongside that, would that be achievable for someone perhaps who's 18, 19?
It's a stretch, I'll be honest. Some people obviously mature faster than others, and some are given greater responsibility in the workplace earlier than others. You know, typically a level 4 qualification, the expectation would be that you would have some sort of managerial duties, some sort of line management, maybe, you know, production line management. So with all of those things, you'd expect a level of maturity and possibly a little bit more age behind it. So that's why it's not as linear as you just go step through the levels, and why some people will do maybe a level 2 and a level 3 and then dip out into industry for a few years and then come back to us and say, right now I'm ready to do my level 4, or even go straight back to university and just pick up the degree and work with that from there.
Yeah, I think what I'd say is it really does depend on the qualification you've done at level 3 and how much of that covers the knowledge, skills and behaviours in a standard. So we do, as a profession, we basically look at your prior learning and accredit that against the standard. So dependent on what the physical qualification was and what standard you're going to do, it's really hard, Sam, isn't it, to almost give a rule of thumb answer. What I say is, if you've got someone in this situation, speak to Sam, speak to ourselves, and we'll do our best to give some really good personalised advice, because it can really, really make a huge difference to what qualification it is and what you want to go on to do. Sam, I think that brings us to the end of our questions. Let me just double check that. Yeah, I do believe we are at the end of our questions. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining us. We really appreciate it. What I would say is that our website's there. Please email the Solent Apprenticeship Hub if you've got any individualised, personalised questions that you didn't feel comfortable asking now. We are more than happy to help, either having a phone call, do an exchange of emails, or actually even do a Zoom call, something like that, so everyone can see the whites of each other's eyes. Contact details are there. Please give us a follow on social media. All of our latest content's always put out on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and also touch base on our YouTube channel, which has got all the previous recordings of all of these we've done, which we've covered all of the main sectors that are available in the area. Thanks again, Sam. Sam, also, you know, if you've got any specific questions about Havant and South Downs provisions, Sam will more than happily answer those. Contact details will be available, as I said, on YouTube or any of our other social media channels. Thanks again, Sam, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, thanks for having me.